show me what his plan and his will is. He's now using it to show me what it's going to be like in the future. Just past the sunrise on the morning of Wednesday, November 20th, 2019, my alarm clock went off at 7:30 a.m., awakening me out of deep sleep and also out of a very powerful dream. At best recollection, the dream began outside of a business establishment in the rural South during the Jim Crow era of segregation. The building was a faded turquoise color with a heavy white trim, and the front door was a glass door with metal trim around it. There was one big concrete step leading to the door's entrance, and it had a white awning over the top of it. There were cars parked all along the street adjacent to this building, and based on the makes and models of cars that I saw, this had to be around the late 1950s, early 1960s. I couldn't make out if the business was a restaurant of some sort, or perhaps a legal or financial institution. But people, both white and black, were going in and out of it. Standing on the step of the entranceway was a young black woman with a royal blue skirt, white blouse, and white head wrap on her head. She wore white bobby socks with those black and white baby doll saddle shoes, the style of that era, and a thin hunter green windbreaker with a hoodie as if she anticipated rain, though the sun was beaming that day. She's standing in the entranceway to the door while seemingly well-to-do people were going around her to enter in and out of the building. They looked upon this young woman like she was nothing, like she didn't even exist. I remember looking at her with some of the same assumptions as those others in their suits, ties, hats, dresses, and leather purses. I thought to myself, who does she think she is? These people were moving right along all around her, and yet she stood still on the step at the entrance of the door. I wondered to myself, what is she waiting for, and who is she waiting for? Because her eyes stayed focused in front of her. So I looked up and down the street, to the left and to the right, to see if someone was coming to pick her up. But no cars were moving. Only people and time were moving. So I looked back at her again, and she had noticeably aged. Her hair was now gray. Her face was wrinkled. Her skin darkened and worn, and she now had on a pair of those cat-eye glasses to aid her vision. Though this young woman had now aged, yet her clothes had not, as she was still adorned in the same attire as she initially had on earlier, and they were as fresh and clean as they were in the beginning. I said to myself that she had spent her entire life standing at this door, so she must be employed by the people who owned the business to open the door for others and to do other little things to make life easier for all of those on the inside. At this point, I am now disgusted for this woman who has seemingly spent her life serving all these others and never knowing any success for herself. She has literally stood here wasting away at the door. I remember smirking and gritting my teeth while saying subconsciously, why am I wasting my time watching her waste her time? She ain't nothing but no servant. As I turned to walk away, the voice of a male spoke out to me and very calmly and politely said, yes, but she is more than a servant. She's a monument. For though all these many years she has stood faithfully at this door, she has also been praying every minute that she has stood here. He further added that everything and everyone else around her kept moving, but she would not be moved. She wasn't simply blocking the door. She was there to open the door for those needing access to what was in this building and to receive all of the things that it had to offer. People were being fed, being educated, being instructed, and empowered. People entered in with debt, but left out with loans, grants, stocks, and bonds. People came in with legal issues to discuss, talked about their trials and their circumstances, but they left out with the full assurance that their circumstances, that everything would be in their favor. So as they came, she prayed, and as they left, she prayed the more. No one left that place the same way that they came. So God sustained her raiment over the years in the same manner that her prayers have sustained those who came to this place. And I remember feeling a sense of guilt for my presumptions of this woman, that somehow we had taken her life for granted. But I also felt a sense of pride that this one little old woman, through her prayers, had changed the life of so many. Then the man's voice said, "She is a warrior. For when you pray, it is then that you war." When he uttered those words, I looked at the woman and realized that for all of this time, she was my mother. And before I could reach out to her to embrace her, the man who was speaking to me took me away, placed me in a room, and began to teach me about the power of prayer. Inside of what was obviously a classroom, with the chalkboard and a projector included, the man placed a miniature pyramid in my hands that reminded me of the old Rubik's Pyramids toy that I had while growing up in East Cleveland. And he then began to instruct me. The voice said to me, "You see, a pyramid is made up of points, and the points are all rooted in its foundation. Turn it around." And I turned it. "Flip it up and down." And I did so. Then he said, "Notice that no matter how you turn it, the foundation still has 3 points. In other words, because its foundation is established, it never loses the point. Shake it, flip it, twist it, turn it. The pyramid is as its foundation is. These 3 points become the chief principles of its very foundation. Can you see it now, son?" he asked of me. And I nodded my head, and I said, "Yes, sir." The voice then said, "When the pyramids were built, the servants would create a corner as they laid one brick at a time and then apply mortar to hold those bricks together. They would repeat these steps over and over while the desert sun and the stroke of their capturers' whips would beat down their backs. The more their enemies beat them, the harder those servants worked to build those pyramids through blood, their sweat, their tears streaming down to the ground and mingling with the mud and straw to produce the very mortar that would hold those bricks together. And fathom, if you would, that in their horrific struggle, just how many of them were assailed, accosted, and assaulted with the very bricks that were used to complete those buildings. A finished product was one in which that was completed on the backs of those who not only laid the bricks, but those also who held up the builders as they climbed each level higher and higher to reach its top. So there were many who died while building because others not strong enough were deployed to lift them as they worked, but buckled under the weight, therefore causing many of them to fall. So remember to applaud and appreciate those who hand over to the master a finished product, because they endured to make sure that you wouldn't fail. He then said, so prayer is like a pyramid. Everyone marvels at its design when it is finished, yet never considering how it was constructed. In closing, God revealed many things to me within the revelation within this dream. As men, we marvel at monuments. We behold its beauty and celebrate its value, but then leave them where we left them, as a monument cannot move. Now with God, it is not so. For though prayer builds a beautiful building, it is built in the presence of God. And though the monument cannot move, yet the monument moves God to remember who built it. Just ask the captain of the Roman army, an Italian man by the name of Cornelius. The book of Acts chapter 10 and verse number 4 says that an angel informed Cornelius that his prayers and gifts came up to heaven and stood as a monument and a memorial before God. So children, I remind you, as my mother often reminded me, when you see me coming, I got him on my mind. And if you see me struggling, pray for me, because I'm praying for you. And these are the times in which men should pray and not faint. So pray, pray children. I can hear my mother clearly saying, keep on praying. When he's blessing and when he's not, keep on praying. And when he's giving and when he's not, keep on praying. And when he's healing and when he's healing not, keep on praying. For the time will come when the vision will speak and it will not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, for it shall surely come to pass. My mother was not just a servant, but she was a warrior of prayer. Let us pray.